first of all, to the Naked Heart Foundation for inviting me along. A particular big thank you to Tanya and to Slava, who spent some time in the UK in June training to deliver the EarlyBird program. And thank you for choosing to come along after the great bidding war before lunch. Okay, so my name is Joe Stevens. I'm a teacher by trade. I'm a practical person. I'm a practitioner, not an academic. And this program is very much a practical approach for parents. I've worked for 30 years with young children with autism and their families. For the past 12 years, I've been a director of the EarlyBird Centre, which is part of the National Autistic Society. Next slide. So I'll just give a little outline about the National Autistic Society before I talk about the EarlyBird program. So our head office is based in London. Our famous London bus. Next slide. The society was developed in 1962, and it was established by parents. 6 parents in the kitchen of a lady called Lorna Wing, who some of you may know that name. She's very famous, certainly in the UK and the States. Those 6 families were aiming to increase the understanding of autism in the big wide world. They also established the first autism-specific school in the UK. So they were pioneers of specialist services in the UK. 2013, today, we are the UK's leading autism charity. We have 18,000 members, parents, professionals, family members, also people with autism themselves, who have a big voice in our society. We have 2,500 staff across the UK. Next slide. So we've developed and provide a range of services for people with autism and for their families. We provide diagnostic and assessment training for local professionals. We have 7 schools and many adult services. Some are day services that adults with autism come to just for the day. The workshop approach that Anna referred to this morning. Some are residential services where the adults live and work Monday to Friday, maybe go home at the weekend. Some are adult services that the adults live in full-time, maybe go home for holidays. Some are supported living services for adults. So they live independently, but somebody will be around or check on them on a regular basis. We also provide training courses, conferences, consultancy services to schools, other adult services, other residential care services. We have an autism accreditation service, so we have a gold stamp for schools and other services, and they get the NAS logo, so parents and family members who are looking at services can see that this is accredited by the NAS, the two Embracing People logo. We have a range of publications, books, leaflets, a lot of publications online that are free to download. And we provide a range of information services, mostly online or by telephone. The NAS website is on the board. So autism.org.uk. There will be some very basic information there that has been translated into Russian, but not a huge amount. Mostly it will be in English. Next slide. So our head office is in London. The EarlyBird Centre, which is myself, 1.5 trainers, and 2.5 admin people. We're based in Yorkshire, 320 kilometres from London. Our role is very much developing and providing, and more importantly, training professionals to provide our post-diagnostic parent support programs. Next slide. So we deliver 3 programs to local families, but most of what we do is we license, we train autism experienced professionals to deliver these same 3 parent support programs. EarlyBird is what I will be talking about today. Was developed in 1999, and it's for families of children between the ages of 2 and 5. EarlyBird Plus is a program for families whose child gets a slightly later diagnosis. So between the ages of 5 and 9. EarlyBird Plus was developed in 2004, so after we'd had some good experiences with EarlyBird. And just this year, 2013, we've developed and launched our new program, which is called Healthy Minds. It's for families with children between 6 and 12 years, and it's an emotional well-being program. There has been a lot of evidence recently that children with autism in their teenage, adolescence, early adulthood are needlessly developing mental health issues. So our Healthy Minds program aims to intervene early with some of those potential issues and hopefully make a difference to families and their children. Next slide. So this morning I was pleased to hear Anna saying that parents didn't know which way to turn. Parents were needing guidance and signposting, because that's very much what the EarlyBird program does. The centre was set up to help to point families in the right direction, to avoid them often going on the internet and Googling autism and finding all kinds of weird and wacky approaches, cures, expensive treatments for which there is little evidence of their effectiveness. So parents told the NAS way back in 1998 that they needed something soon after getting that diagnosis for their very young child. So our programs are about giving information, yes, about giving advice, yes, but also, more importantly, it's about giving parents group support. So they're very much about group learning, supporting each other. Next slide. So very much this afternoon I've been asked to talk about EarlyBird. That's my baby. That's what I do. So EarlyBird, it's a 3-month parent program. So we're not working hands-on with the children. We're working one step removed with their parents. We are empowering parents. And Christy mentioned both yesterday afternoon and this morning in her talk how important it is to empower parents to take responsibility. Parents are the ones that spend the majority of their time with their child. So for professionals to parachute in for an hour or 2 hours, or maybe even for 2 hours every day, is not as effective as parents working 18 hours a day through their daily activities, what they do on a day-to-day basis. So families with a preschool child, so under 5 years, can access the program, and it's a post-diagnosis program. We don't take families who are waiting for a diagnosis. Our program is very much about getting the diagnosis, maybe taking some time to come to terms with that, and then moving on. And that's what our program is about. Our program is about helping families to move on post-diagnosis. The program's available to the family of any child on the autism spectrum. Any child within that learning spectrum. So we have families on our program with children with mild autism, no learning disability. We have families on our programs with children with mild autism, severe learning disability. We have families with severe learning disability, moderate autism, a whole range of. Wherever they fall within that umbrella of autism, learning ability, families can access our program. Next slide. So what does the program aim to do? We aim to support parents after diagnosis. Now for some parents, that's very soon after diagnosis. Maybe a few weeks, a couple of months. For other parents, it can be 6 months, it can be a year, it can be 18 months or 2 years, as long as the child is still under 5 years of age. The program is very much about empowering parents. We want parents to see their child's autism in as positive way as we possibly can. And Christy yesterday in her assessment diagnostic workshop talked about the fact that yes, there are a lot of deficits for children with autism, but there are also a lot of good things, a lot of strengths, and a lot of things to celebrate. And that's the focus, that's the emphasis that we use within the program. So it's a very fun, activity-based, full of laughter, which might surprise you, full of laughter program. And it helps lift parents and it helps them see their child's autism as not a lifelong sentence, but just something else that little Billy has that we can work with. So the program's not about prescribing to parents. The program is about laying out options to families. We would explain what we know are good autism strategies, and we say to parents, here is the information. You need to decide what will work for you, your child, in your family circumstances. Because what works for a family with one child with autism, with good support from grandparents and family and friends, may not necessarily work for a single mum who's perhaps got 2 children on the spectrum with little support. So the programme is not one size fits all. The programme is, this is what we know is useful, this is what has been proven to be good for children with autism. You need to decide what's going to be useful for you and your family. You know, we know, that the sooner we can help families establish good practice, the better life is for everybody. The child, the parents, the siblings, the extended family, the next door neighbours, the school, the nursery, everybody involved, life improves if we can get that good practice in place very early on. Next slide. So the programme itself, we work with between 4 and 6 families. It's about group learning, it's not individual. We work with groups of 4 to 6 families. There are 8 group sessions, 2.5 hours. So 1 morning a week or 1 afternoon a week. Within those 8 group sessions, there are 4 home visits. During those home visits, we take some video footage of the parent and the child playing together, interacting together, doing something together. We are not looking at what the child can do. We are looking at the strategies that the parents have put in place. And I'm going to highlight some of those strategies in a little while. So the focus is very much on the parents. 3 months after the programme is concluded, we have a follow-up session. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so this is how the programme looks. We have a pre-programme home visit, which gets everybody used to strange lady with video camera coming into the house. That just helps to reduce mum and dad's anxieties. It certainly helps to reduce the child's anxiety. There are then 3 group sessions. The focus at the beginning of the programme is very much on helping families to understand their child's autism. The different ways that young children with autism think, learn, experience the world. After the first 3 sessions, we have a home visit, a practical session. In session 3, we go through a lot of strategies and we ask parents to go home, choose 1 or 2 of those strategies to start to implement with their child, and then we go home visit A, to video that implementation. We call that our people game. So it's a one-on-one, two-way shared attention. So it's about the adult and the child interacting, having fun together in a very linear way. And I'm hoping, if we go on a slide, we should have an example of a two-way people game, one of our families playing with her child, and you'll see that she's using his name, she's stopping, she's waiting for a response, he's sitting on her lap, so they've got nice opportunities for eye contact. If he indicates in some way that he wants her to carry on, she carries on. So this is a pre-verbal little boy, but he's communicating non-verbally, and if he isn't, mum is anticipating that he might, if she repeats this routine over and over. Okay, so in the home visit, we're taking 3 or 4 minutes of video. We're not taking loads and loads and loads of video, just a short clip. And then we would sit in the home visit and analyse that with the family. We'll look at that in just a short while. So then there are 2 more group sessions, and then the second home visit. Again, we've added in a little bit more, so the programme is very much building on the previous sessions. So we've added in some more information. Parents know more about their child's autism, they've learnt more about their child's communication, and they've got some more tools in their toolbox, some more strategies. So home visit B, we add in another element to that one-on-one interaction. So it becomes a 3-way, a very triangular shared attention. So we have adult, child, and a toy or an activity. And I'm hoping, if we move on a slide.
Blow. Good looking. Woo! Again. Balloon. Ready, blow. 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 Ready. Good looking. Woo! Again. Oh, that's funny, lovely. Thomas. Balloon. Blow. Blow. Good looking. Woo.
Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so at this point in the programme, we'd introduced families to the picture exchange communication system. This mum had introduced it at home with her little boy, and you could see that he was learning there to use a picture of a balloon to ask to play with the balloon. So that real, absolutely important motivation for him. He wanted to play with that balloon, so he knew that he had to exchange that picture. Okay, I've lost my thread. This mum in this video clip, her name is Nikki, and whilst she was on the EarlyBird programme, she decided that actually all of the things that we were talking about related to her and her life, and she went and got a diagnosis of autism as an adult. She's a verbal, able woman. She's had a career, and she's now got 2 children, one of whom has a diagnosis. The second one she has a few concerns about, but she's got a diagnosis herself, and she is a great advocate of the EarlyBird program, as you can imagine. Okay, so the next 2 sessions, 6 and 7, we spend some time problem solving, talking about those areas that Christy referred to this morning, those adaptive skills, toileting, eating, sleeping, dressing, the kinds of issues that parents have a lot of concerns with when they have a young child with autism. Our home visit C, which is our something to celebrate, I'm going to save until a little later in the presentation so that we can all celebrate together. And then 3 months after the programme, we all come back together again for a final session. So it's a very short term, get people started on understanding autism and give them a box of tools with which they can continue to work. We don't see our families on an ongoing basis. They come, we do 3 months, and then they go. Actually, we'll stay there. Are there any questions so far?
Нам нужно будет микрофон, потому что переводчики не переведут наш вопрос. То есть будем задавать вопросы, передавая микрофончик, хорошо?
Меня зовут Екатерина. Я вот не совсем поняла и хотела бы уточнить. Через 3 месяца после проведения программы вы сказали, что вновь собираетесь вместе. Что вы смотрите? Вы опять просматриваете, вы делаете видеозаписи, анализируете, какие были, ну, как это сохранилось, не сохранилось, то, что достигли, да? Вот хотелось бы уточнить. Спасибо.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, during the group sessions, so each of these lines is a week. So in the first week, we do a lot of information about autism. In the second week, we talk about autism and also about communication. In the third week, we introduce some strategies. So I'll go into more detail as we go through the presentation. But each week, there are some activities, there's some information from the presenters. We do analyse lots of video clips, and we share lots of story examples from within the group, and we do some problem solving. So we do a bit of everything. Is that okay?
Меня зовут Роман Золотовицкий. Я знаю, что родители бывает очень разный уровень образования и очень разная мотивация, и некоторые из них не принимают диагноз. Учите ли вы родителей играть с детьми?
We do a lot of teaching about play. Increasingly, lots of families don't play with their children. The children have what we refer to as electronic babysitters. They have a DVD player or a computer or a PSP. That's what they play with. So we do a lot of work in these early sessions in 2 and 3 particularly on ways to play, and we show lots of video, and we do some demonstrations in the group where one of the trainers will be a child and the other trainer will do some play activities. Yeah, so lots of demonstration.
Добрый день. Джо, скажите, пожалуйста, не совсем понятно. Программа ваша длится 3 месяца, правильно я поняла? После этого вы отслеживаете результат. И для чего вам этот результат? Что дальше?
The follow-up is a social activity, really, for the families to come together and share their progress over those 3 months. So when they finish the EarlyBird program, they will be getting local services. So they'll be getting speech therapy, autism outreach services, physiotherapy or occupational therapy if that's required. So they don't finish the program and get nothing. They finish the program and then go on to the cycle of the local provision, which is all state funded.
Правильно ли я тогда поняла, что программа EarlyBird – это такой вариант информирования, да, подготовки людей к включению в проблему для того, чтобы они дальше шли и помогали своим детям, и чтобы помощь их детям была эффективнее?
Yeah, absolutely. Information, advice and strategies. Yeah.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
Скажите, Джо, вы помогаете решить, куда деть детей на 2,5 часа, или родители берут эту проблему на себя?
Yeah, the children in the UK would have provision for that time in a nursery or a kindergarten. Yeah, we have free provision. Children from 2 have 12 hours free provision in a nursery or a kindergarten. So they're in a nursery or a kindergarten. Not with us. Somewhere else. Last question for now, and then we need to move on, and then there will be time later for questions.
Спасибо. Скажите, пожалуйста, какие специалисты участвуют в программе, которую вы вот сейчас представляете, и как они делят свои обязанности, если это есть?
Okay, so I will talk a little later about the training, but that's fine. It's good to repeat things. We have 2 trainers at all times to deliver the program. The professionals that we train to deliver will be anybody who has experience of autism and who is working in what we call a local authority, so local provision. I'm not sure how that translates. A local council or local state, possibly. So they would be teachers, speech therapists, psychologists, pediatrician, occupational therapists, social workers, physiotherapists. Have I forgotten anybody? Pretty much anybody who is working with families with very young children with a diagnosis. It's a whole range of people. So the 2 people delivering the program may be a psychologist and a speech therapist, or a teacher and an occupational therapist. So, yeah. Okay, we'll move on, and maybe some of your questions will get answered through the presentation. Okay, so the program content, which hopefully we've touched on, but some people may have more questions about the content. The program was not developed to establish a new, exciting, wonderful therapy. The program pulled together existing good practice in the field of autism. In the UK, we have a phrase called not reinventing the wheel. So if it already exists, don't waste time trying to reinvent it. So we pull together the existing good practice in the field of autism. SPELL, I'm just going to tell you a little about. SPELL is the National Autistic Society's framework for schools and services. Some of you may be familiar with Division Teach, the North Carolina approach, the cradle-to-grave approach, which helps children to understand the world around them, also gives them a voice and helps them to make sense of what's going on around them. Division Teach use lots of visual support, and we, during the programme, encourage families to use some visual support as well. We also, as you've seen in the video clip there of Nick and Thomas, introduce families to the picture exchange communication system, which gives children who don't have a voice a non-verbal means of communication, a very effective way of young children, well, children of all ages, but a very effective way of helping children to communicate. Next slide. So the SPELL framework, this is a framework that underpins, that is the foundation for all of the National Autistic Society services and schools. It's a little acronym, and I've learned that acronyms don't work overseas. So the S of SPELL is about structure. It's about helping our children have predictability in their lives, because we know that that reduces their anxiety. We encourage our families to use restricted choices with their children. So rather than, what do you want for breakfast? And little Billy says, McDonald's. And Mum says, don't be silly, you can't have McDonald's for breakfast. And Billy kicks and screams and cries. We say to parents, give the choice that's available. Toast or Cheerios. Fruit or Weetabix. Do you have Weetabix?
Yogurt.
Thank you. The P of SPELL is about being positive. This is a very positive program. We take a very positive approach, and we encourage parents to have positive expectations of their child. So it's not all doom and gloom, and it's not, oh, he can't do that because he has autism. We take a very positive approach. We want to intervene early. That's why the program is called EarlyBird. Again, in the UK, we have a phrase which says, the early bird catches the worm. So the sooner you get up, the better it is. So that's the same with our children. The sooner we can get involved, then the better life will be. The E of SPELL is about empathy, seeing the world from the child's perspective. So helping parents to get inside the thought, the minds, the hearts of their young child with autism, to see the world the way that their child sees it. The first L of SPELL is about low arousal. We know that for many children, the social, sensory world is very overwhelming. So sometimes it's good to have a calm environment to reduce distractions. But not always, because they have to live in the real world. And the world is not a low arousal place. The second L is about making links, linking the theory with the practice. So in the group session, we spend some time, and not long, maybe just 15 or 20 minutes, talking about the theory, and then we spend time talking about, and how does that work in practice? What might that look like in my house with my child? We encourage families to make links with community services, with local support groups, with each other. And many of our families make such good friends on the program that they are friends years later. We just had a celebration in July, and one of our mums, who we're going to meet very shortly, her little boy is now 16, And she still meets with 2 of the mums that she came on the programme with when Linus was 5 years old. So 11 years those 3 mums have been friends because they have that commonality, that support of that kind of autism community. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Just a little about home visits and the use of video feedback. Video feedback within the programme is a really powerful learning tool. It enables the parent to take a step back and see what they were doing with their child, what was working well, so they can do more of it, and perhaps what didn't work quite so well and how they might change that. Very much putting that theory into practice, so we don't do go home and do this, we do go home, have a think about it, and have a go. So it's very much getting stuck in. It's about helping families to develop practical skills, self-evaluation and confidence. Lots of our families come on the programme with very low self-esteem and very lacking in confidence because they've been struggling to meet the needs of their child. They haven't understood necessarily about the autism, and consequently they haven't done things differently to meet those differing needs. Let the tape do the talking, we say. So it's not about the trainer going in and watching the video with the parent and saying, oh, you did that well, oh, you shouldn't have done that. It's about both of us together sitting and watching the video and analysing together and working out what's good about that video and how we can build on that. I find this bit really hard, to zip my lips and not say, oh, that was really good. But it's really a really powerful way of working if we can step back and allow parents to self-evaluate. With some guidance in some cases, absolutely. We just take a short clip, 3 or 4 minutes, so that we can fast forward, rewind, watch 2 or 3 times over. Much more powerful than taking 10 minutes and nobody wants to watch it because everybody's lost interest. So those 2 clips that we saw earlier were exactly what those families had done at their home visits. Next slide. There are 3 subject areas that we cover very much through the programme, and I've talked a little bit about them. The first area is helping parents to understand about autism, the different way that young children with autism think, learn, experience the world, because that tells us that we need to do things differently. This cartoon just shows how confusing the world might be for young children with autism and how important it is that we help them to navigate through that world. And that means that we need to do things differently. We often say to our parents, leave to one side your typical parenting skills, because sometimes they don't work with young children with autism. We need to think about doing things differently. Okay, we are just going to have a little bit of an activity. This is an activity that we play with our families in the group session, and it's called Myths and Facts. We play it in session 1 to make people very clear what is a myth in the world of autism and what is a fact. So, I have ready prepared in my carrier bag some statements. And if the statement that I read you think is true, you need to raise your right hand. If you think it's false, you need to raise your left hand. Now, we do this activity with parents, and we might give them smiley faces, a smiley face and a sad face, or we might give them a green flag and a red flag, or we might give them a tick or a cross to hold, but we make it a fun, light-hearted activity. It's just setting the scene about what's different and what are autism myths and what might be, or what are some of the facts. Okay. So, right hand true, left hand false. Autism may be accompanied by differing degrees of learning ability. Yay. Okay, most people think that's true. We'll review shortly whether it is or not. So we're not going to debate at this point in the program. Autism is a lifelong disability. Again, most people think that's true, so we put it on the true pile. Autism results from bad behavior and naughtiness. Most people, but not all in the group sometimes, will think that that's not true, that that's a myth. Autism is about bad parenting. Most people say that's false. Oh, even more people say it's false now it's been translated. Just one more, we won't do them all. Autism is always accompanied by a genius ability, a savant skill. Some false, some true. We'll have a look. Okay, next slide. So we play that game with a number of different statements, and then we highlight which are the myths and which are the facts. It's a fun, light-hearted activity. We're not doom and gloom in this program. So the myths are that autism is not simply another term for learning difficulties. We heard that this morning. Autism is something distinct, something unique in the different way that our children think, learn, and experience the world. We have on our myth list that once speech begins, all the other difficulties disappear. We know that that's not the case. We know that it's not just about whether or not a child can speak. It's about whether or not a child can use that communication in a meaningful way. Lots of our children can speak a lot. They can recite hours of favourite DVDs or favourite stories, but they can't tell you that they need a drink or they want their favourite candy. We also have on our myth that autism does not always occur with an area of genius ability. That's not true. People voted that as not true, and that's great. But for some of our families, The only thing that they know about autism is Rain Man. Do you guys know Rain Man? Yeah. These people with autism who have these very outstanding savant skills. But we know that that's just a small percentage of children with autism. Not everybody. We also have on our myths that autism is not about bad behaviour and naughtiness. It's about the different way that our children think, learn and experience the world. And we also have on our myth list, autism is not about bad parenting. And we say to our parents very clearly here in session 1, bad parents do not come on a parenting program. It's not about anything that you've done. And Christy highlighted that again this morning. We know that it's biological, it's genetic in origin. It's not about bad parenting. So, the facts. Thank you. The facts are that autism is a developmental disorder which involves the brain. Lots of ongoing research. We have on our fact list as well that autism is more likely in boys than in girls. And mostly our groups reflect that. Mostly we will have 5 boys, 1 girl. Often we have a whole group of families, 6 boys. Very occasionally we will have families with 2 girls in the group. That's very occasional. Mostly just 1 lone girl. We also have on our fact list that autism may also be associated with bowel problems, with digestion issues. May. Sometimes, sometimes not. You voted yes, that autism may be accompanied by differing degrees of learning ability. We know that. We know that there are many people with severe learning difficulties. We know that there are also many people with average, above average intelligence. World famous people, Temple Grandin, number of people that we would refer to who are UK people would mean nothing to you. We have on our fact list that autism is a lifelong disability. There is no cure. We're very honest with our families from session 1. There is no cure, but there is a lot that we can do to help. On our fact list as well, autism is genetically linked. There is an increased rate of occurrence in other family members. And many of our families will have other children with a diagnosis, or brothers or sisters, extended family members with a diagnosis. But some don't. Some, they don't see any traits in any other family members. So that myths and facts game, that sets the scene in session 1 for what is autism. And we then spend a lot of time looking at the differences, those different whys that our children experience. Issues around social communication, social interaction, social imagination, flexibility of thinking, sensory issues. So a lot of information sharing, a lot of story examples. What might social interaction look like in a 3 or 4-year-old? We also look at psychological theories in a very light touch way. These are parents that we're working with. We're not doing psychology training courses, but we do look at those two theories, or two of the theories that Brian referred to yesterday, theory of mind and central coherence theory. Now, we're very kind to our parents and we jargon bust those titles, so we refer to theory of mind as mind blindness, that difficulty being able to see the world from somebody else's viewpoint, to put yourself inside somebody else's head. And central coherence theory, we talk about focus on detail and the fact that us as typically developing people tend to get the overall picture first. But for many of our children, they will focus on a very small detail. Next slide. Thank you. I'm giving you a 3-month program in 2 hours. So, the second subject that we look at is communication. Again, we look at communication in its absolute broadest sense, not just about talking. And in fact, only 25% of communication is about talking. 75% is non-verbal communication. So looking, smiling, body language, gesture. And this cartoon really highlights how for many children with autism, words just go over their head. So as adults, we need to adjust our communication. We need to do the things differently. Next slide. And these are some of the strategies that we introduce to our families. Adjust your communication. 10-second strategies that everybody can do without spending lots of money, making lots of resources. These are things that we can all do the minute we walk out of this door. We encourage families to use their child's name first to get their attention. Anybody that was in Christie's workshop yesterday afternoon, she talked how important it is about that shared attention, getting a child's attention. If we use their name at the end of the sentence, the information has already gone over their head, and then they turn. It's too late then. So we encourage our families to do, Billy, come here, rather than, come here, Billy. I talked a little earlier about giving available choices. And we also encourage people that if there's no choice, don't give one. Now, in the UK, we're very good at saying to little children, do you want to go to the toilet? When really, what we mean is, it's time to go to the toilet because we're going out. So, very much encouraging parents that if there is no choice, don't give one. Billy, it's time to go to the toilet. We introduce first and then, or now and next, whatever people are comfortable with. You know, first have your bath, then you can have your DVD. First put your coat on, then you can play in the garden. For those children who really dislike the word no, we encourage families to introduce finished in a very positive way. Good boy, dinner's finished. Now you can have ice cream. And then, when the child has got used to hearing it in a very positive way, parents can use it to stop activities. Computer's finished, DVD's finished, books finished. But it has to be taught very positively initially. We encourage parents to say things in the order in which they're going to happen. Listen to yourself talk later. We don't do that. We're going to Grandma's in the car, get your coat on, come on, hurry up, we'll be late. So, coat on, we're going in the car to Grandma's house. It's not rocket science. Tell the child what to do rather than what not to do. So rather than stop shouting, quiet voice. Stop running, walk slowly. And at this point in the program, we encourage families to use visual ways to help their child understand. Things that we have readily available. Holding the car keys, getting the diaper, showing the swimming bag. Just ordinary, everyday things that we have ready available. And I think we have a video clip. This is the mum that I talked about earlier, whose little boy is now 16, 17.
Linus, come to Mum, balloons. Come, sit down.
Okay, so edited highlights of a little play activity, just 3 minutes, where that mum is using many of those little 10-second strategies just to encourage families to go away and give it a go. Oh, more work for you. A test. Okay, we introduce families to the Division Teach idea that anything that we can do visually to help our children understand is going to be a bonus. And we do that through this little test, this little activity. So get ready to raise your hands. Doesn't matter which one this time. Do you have a diary or a calendar to help you organize your life? Yep. Pretty much everyone in the room has a diary or a calendar or both to help you organize your life. Have you ever pointed to a picture on a menu to show what you wanted? Particularly when you're in Russia and you don't speak Russian. Absolutely. Next. Do you write a shopping list before going to the shops? Some do, some don't. Do you ever read a sign to tell you where to go? Or which is your driver to collect you at the airport? Absolutely. So, just a little activity to highlight to families that we all use visual support during the day. For our children, it's extra special. We know that many children with autism are good visual learners. We also know that many of them struggle to process verbal information quickly. So let's help them. Let's use some pictures or some photographs or some objects or the written word to help them understand, which in turn will reduce their anxiety, which in turn will reduce some of those behaviour issues that our families experience regularly. Okay, just hang on because I'm not sure if it will play straight away. So this is that third clip that I said I would save. This is from Home Visit C. This is Catherine, one of our mums, using some visuals to help her little boy Daniel get ready in the morning without her having to chase him all around the house. Okay.
Hey, what's next? Stop. Now get.
Okay, so this mum is celebrating the fact that she'd introduced some visuals to her little boy and they were making a big difference to both their lives. Thank you. And then the third element of the programme, that third subject area, but they are all intertwined. So we don't not talk about behaviour earlier in the programme, but we focus much more on it at this end point of the programme. Often by the time we get here, parents have already started to see differences in their children because they understand more about autism and they're doing things differently. So some of the problems that they had at the beginning of the 3 months, they're saying, well, he never used to go to bed on time. We've put in place some visuals. We worked out that it was the heating clock in the cupboard in his bedroom that was waking him up or disturbing him. We've put blackout curtains. We've identified that he doesn't like the smell of the washing powder. That's why he wouldn't get in the bed. And now he's better. He's not 100% sorted, but he goes to bed and he stays in bed much better. So we get lots of those examples at the end of the programme rather than a big long list of behaviours that people want sorted, because parents are empowered. They have the knowledge and they have the strategies now to make a difference themselves. So, one tool that we do use, next slide. Okay. 2 tools that we use in the programme. This is the Division Teach iceberg. Some of you may be familiar with icebergs. We talk to our families about the fact that what we see, the behaviour, is just the tip of the iceberg. What we need to be doing is diving under that waterline and trying to work out why, those underlying reasons. If people don't know about icebergs, 10% of an iceberg is above the waterline, 90% is under the waterline. So that's where we're using that analogy, that comparison, that what we see in our children is just 10%. What we need to be doing is looking at the 90% underneath, which is often about social, sensory, making sense of the world, not understanding. Are people familiar with this iceberg approach? A few people. Tanya and Slava will do some training. Okay, next slide. Another tool that we introduce to our families when we're looking at behaviour is this star, which I think will not be familiar to anybody because I think it is exclusively UK. I'm not sure. In the US, do you know STAR? No? Okay, you may be more familiar with ABC, antecedents, behaviours, consequences. Yeah, looking at what happened before, then the behaviour, and then what happened after. We just take that one step further and we use this STAR approach. We look at the action, the child's behaviour. So it's another acronym which I know doesn't work in Russian. That's life. We start with the A, the action, the observed behaviour. What does Billy do? Billy throws his dinner on the floor. We then look at the settings. That one up on the top right. We look at the environmental settings. So where was he? Was he at home, in the kitchen? Was he in a busy, noisy cafe? Was he in the kindergarten with lots of children around him? Was he at grandma's house? We also encourage families to look at the personal settings. So what else was happening perhaps inside Billy or inside Billy's head? Is he hot? Is he cold? Is he hungry? Is he tired? Is he stressed because he's been at nursery all morning and he's had enough social? He's overflowing with stress. And then we try to identify the trigger. What do we think might have set off this behaviour? Billy threw his dinner on the floor. He was at grandma's house, and grandma always has her dinner much later than at home. And the trigger, what set it off, grandma brought him spaghetti, and Billy likes spaghetti hoops. Grandma had said we're having spaghetti. In Billy's head, he thinks spaghetti hoops. On grandma's plate, spaghetti string. Dinner goes on the floor. So then we say to families, well, let's look at the results for Billy. Were there any positive results for Billy? Does grandma rush to the cupboard and get his favourite chocolate bar instead? Were there any negative results for Billy? Does she take away his favourite toy? Were there any social results? Maybe Grandad comes rushing in and starts playing a tickle game with Billy to diffuse the situation. Were there any sensory results? Did he like playing in that mess on the floor? And those material results, does he get something good instead? So we introduce this tool to families to help them be detectives. That's one of our EarlyBird slogans, be detectives. To look at when situations go wrong, do an analysis and think, okay, next time, what can we do differently? We can't do anything about what's just happened. What we can do is we can draw a line under it and think next time we'll remember to tell grandma that Billy only likes spaghetti hoops. And hopefully that will make a difference. Okay, so in session 7 and session 8, next slide, thank you, we spend some time doing some problem solving in those areas that often are fairly stressful for families with young children with autism. We look at those repetitive behaviours, special interests, obsessions, temper tantrums and aggression. We look at fears and phobias. And then in session 8, we look at those adaptive skills, those self-help skills, eating, sleeping, toileting and hygiene. But what we don't do is problem solve for the families. The families may have an issue. Billy is frightened of going in the car. So together as a whole group, we'd be saying, okay, why might Billy be frightened of going in the car? What do we now know about autism, the way that Billy sees the world, that helps us try to identify why Billy might be frightened of going in the car? And then we say, okay, and what might be some of the ways to help? Now, if we identify it's a sensory issue, Billy won't go in the car since Dad brought a new air freshener for the car, then that's straightforward. We can take the air freshener out. If we identify that it's lack of understanding, Billy doesn't know where we're going, one of the strategies might be to use some visuals, a photograph or a picture to help him understand. But that process of what's happening, why it might be happening, and how might this family start to make a difference is very much the focus for these 2 sessions. So it's not the trainers saying, you need to do X, Y, and Z. It's about the whole group, so all of the families together pooling their ideas, sharing their ideas about why that might be a problem and how they might go about sorting it. And these 2 sessions are amazing sessions in the programme. Parents who came in session 1, very anxious, very upset about their child's diagnosis, full of negativity perhaps about what life was like ahead of them, at this point in the programme are sharing stories with other families. We had a similar situation, we tried this, give this a go. It's a really magical element of the programme, these final 2 sessions. And we know at this point that if we keep running out of time in these sessions, then we have empowered parents to go away and to be able to make a difference this week, next month. Next slide. So that again was a something to celebrate video clip. That little girl at the beginning of the programme would not engage with her parents at all. She wouldn't do anything. She just ran around the room. If they tried to approach her, she would scream and not cooperate. So again, a really nice example of parents implementing the strategies and it making a difference with their little girl. At the end there, Dad was desperate for Ellie to do a little bit of drawing, but she really wanted him to do it. And again, that's a really nice example. And yesterday afternoon, for anybody that was in Christie's workshop, there was a question about following the child's lead. And we do encourage this balance of some things adults need to be directing and to be in charge of, because after all, we are the grown-ups. But sometimes we can follow the child's lead as well. And that dad he didn't get stressed about the fact that we were there with the video camera. He just went with what he felt was right. And just right at the very end there, she did pick up the pen and do a little bit of drawing. So it was a really nice something to celebrate. Is this a summary?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So just to summarize then about the program, it's an autism-specific early intervention. It's very parent-focused, not child-focused. It's about sharing information and practical advice. Parents have that opportunity to meet with other parents in a similar situation. And we're very much about empowering parents and encouraging them to have a very positive approach. So people often say to us, well, how do you know that the program works? Next slide. How do you know that the program is effective? So in 2004, we had a small-scale study published in the Good Autism Practice. It's a UK practitioners' journal. 119 families not only attended the 3-month program, which is a big commitment in itself, but they also took part in some additional assessments. The PSI, the Parenting Stress Index that we heard about this morning, measuring parents' levels of stress before and after the program. Slava mentioned yesterday that many of you will be familiar with the CARS, the Division Teach Childhood Autism Rating Scale. Again, a questionnaire for parents measuring how autistic do you feel your child is, pre-program and post-program. And then the Vineland, which is a psychological assessment in the UK. Again, it's parent interview, but looking at the child's development, not just social and communication, but cognitive skills, motor skills as well. So 119 families took part in additional assessments with either an educational or a clinical psychologist who wasn't delivering their program. And basic results were that parents were less stressed. So their PSI scores reduced significantly by the time they'd finished attending the program. Parents were using less language with their children at the end of the program. We videoed parents, apart from the program videos, we also videoed parents interacting with their child, and we had a researcher just look at the amount of language, not the quality, but just the amount of language. Again, one of our EarlyBird slogans is reduce your language. So it was good for us to see that parents were using less language. And using the CARS, parents were scoring their children less autistic at the end of the program than at the beginning. Now, it's not that the program is about curing autism. The program is about helping parents to understand their child's autism better and to do things differently. And once they do things differently, some of those behaviour issues start to reduce and parents see their child in a more positive way. So not that we're saying the programme cures autism. Next slide. And this month, hopefully, when I get home, I will have a copy of October's Good Autism Practice. We had 136 families complete an identical questionnaire before the programme and after the programme. And they were asked to score on a scale of 1 to 5 about their understanding of autism, their understanding of communication, their use of different strategies, whether they felt they had a good support group, good support network around them. So, basic, simple results. At the beginning of the programme, 22% of these families felt they had a good understanding of autism. At the end of the programme, 94% felt they had a good understanding. Confidence levels. How confident do you feel explaining autism to others? At the beginning of the programme, only 18% felt confident explaining autism to others. At the end of the programme, 92% felt confident explaining autism to others. Are you using any visual supports? At the beginning of the programme, 42%. At the end of the programme, 80% were using visuals to help their children understand, make sense of the world. Do you feel you have a good network of support? Almost half the families, 49%, at the beginning of the programme felt they had a good level of support. But that had risen to 78% at the end of the programme. And for many of those families, the increase in support was the other EarlyBird families that they'd met on the programme. Okay, we'll take a little break for questions and then I'll tell you just a little bit about how the professional training course. So,
Не знаю, да, работает. Здравствуйте, меня зовут Евгения, Санкт-Петербургский институт раннего вмешательства. Я бы хотела узнать, вот за время прохождения программы, направленной на развитие родительской стратегии, получает ли семья какие-то другие виды помощи в других службах, например, направленные только на ребенка, не знаю, занятия индивидуальные со спич-терапевтом или так далее? Если получает, то как происходит коммуникация между специалистами или же только программа EarlyBird, вот 3 месяца и дальше происходит переход?
I did forget to say, at the beginning of the programme, all of the families are given a handbook. So everything that we talk about over the 3 months is in the handbook. So families have this to share with other professionals. But yes, families will also have whatever is available in their locality, speech therapy, autism outreach, physio or occupational therapy. Sometimes, if families are attending an EarlyBird programme, those services may reduce for those 3 months. In some areas, they stop for those 3 months because it's a lot to expect parents to do a parenting programme and also find time for therapy visits and appointments. But yes, families do have other local services as well. In the UK, because the programme is very well known, often it might be the child's speech therapist who is also the EarlyBird trainer. So she just knows the content of the program. But we encourage parents to share the program content via their workbook with nurseries, kindergartens, anybody else who is involved with the child. So we don't do the communication because we're empowering parents to do that.
Анна Боброва, Нижний Новгород. Скажите, пожалуйста, видео, которое используется в работе с программой, оно обсуждается с родителями индивидуально во время консультирования или это на групповых занятиях с родителями происходит?
Great question. Both. We we take the video in the home and we analyze that in the home and discuss that with them. We then edit out a minute and a half, just a small section, and we bring that back to the following session. So then all 6 families share 1.5 minutes of their home video, and then we all discuss as a whole group. So first in the home, and then together as a whole group.
Еще можно один маленький вопросик. На вот этих групповых занятиях родители присутствуют, оба родителя, то есть и папа, и мама, или как у вас складывается с этим?
Yeah. Okay, good question. We offer 2 places to each family. So we can have 12 adults in the group if we have 6 families attending. Sometimes both parents attend, sometimes just mum attends, sometimes just dad attends, sometimes mum will come with sometimes dad and sometimes grandma or other family member. As long as one person comes to all of the program, the second person can be more flexible. We try to encourage 2, but in the real world, people have to work. So we'll take what we can get.
Я видел, что мама, когда надувала шарик, она сказала: ой, не получилось. Вот преднамеренно ли делается что-то для того, чтобы ребенок видел, что не все точно по сценарию? Какие-то ошибки, импровизации? Или просто случайность?
I'm not sure. Knowing the mum, I would say it's deliberate, but it could have been accidental. But that would absolutely be something that we would discuss in the whole group, that sometimes to give children that practice that life isn't this nice smooth path. Oh dear, we have no biscuits. Oh dear, the DVD's missing. Yeah, is a strategy that we would share in the program. We call it, I'm not sure how this will translate. We call it sabotage. So, sabotage? Yeah? It's the same? Yeah. Okay. So we say to parents, it's a good idea to sabotage sometimes to get children used to the fact that sometimes things go wrong. But in the same way that we encourage them to teach finished in a very positive way, we would encourage them to sabotage initially very positively. So, oh dear, no cookies, but we have candy instead. So children know that if it's gone wrong, initially there's a positive alternative, and then over time they'll learn that sometimes the alternative is not so positive. Yeah, good question. Thank you.
У меня вопрос по структуре занятия. Есть ли у занятия какая-то четко определенная структура у каждого, которую вы групповые проводите? Либо это тема, а структура, она уже такая плавающая в зависимости от группы?
I can see Tanya smiling because it is very structured. We have a very structured way of introducing the subject. We then do some explanation. We then do some whole group getting people used to translating the theory into practice. We then do some small groups, so 2 families together doing some practice, and then we give people something to think about at home. So it is, as you would imagine in the world of autism, very structured.
И каждое занятие, вот эта структура на каждом занятии, она поддерживается.
Yeah. It's not a support group. It's not a coffee session. It's a structured learning. Yeah. We have coffee. We have social in the middle, but either side of coffee, structure.
Спасибо.
Yeah.
Павликова Василина, город Тула. Я хотела бы спросить, как вы мотивируете родителей для участия? Потому что вот у нас как бы родители, грубо хотят отдохнуть от детей. Они приходят к 3 специалистам. Вы умные, вы все знаете, вот научите ребенка. А мы вот так и быть придем к вам на занятия. То есть очень сложно замотивировать. Максимум это сопровождение.
Yeah. The best way that we motivate parents is our other parents. So we invite parents to come along to an information meeting. We would have some video clips of parents who have been on the program talking about what they learnt and how helpful it was for them. We sometimes have real parents at the meeting to talk about what they thought about the program. So that's how we motivate parents. We don't, the other parents motivate them. Yeah. I think, is there at the front here?
Простите, можно еще один вопрос, да? Я прошу прощения, может быть, вопрос не очень деликатный. Скажите, пожалуйста, как финансируется ваш центр? Какой штат сотрудников у вас? Да, просто исходя из того, что 6 семей обслуживается, да, за курс. Спасибо. 2500 в этом центре.
Yeah. Okay. Our centre, we're a charity, so we are not funded by the state. But the professionals who come to train to offer the program locally, they fund our centre. So they pay a professional training fee to us for their training. But when the teams deliver the program locally, and it'll make more sense when I just move on a little, it's provided by the state. So, for instance, a speech therapist and a psychologist from London might come to train in Barnsley, and the London council will pay us their training fee and their licensing fee, and then they go back to London where they're already working with the families, and they offer the same 3-month program locally.
Спасибо.
Yes?
Что для семьи? А семьи, вот меня еще спрашивают коллеги, семьи тоже что-то платят, да?
No.
Нет.
Sometimes a very small amount to cover the cost of the book. So maybe, and it varies across the country, but the most they would pay would be £25, which is... just to cover the cost of the book, and tea and coffee and biscuits.
Спасибо.
Okay. Okay, I'll just explain a little more about the professional training.
Можно последний вопрос?
There'll be more time for questions. I'll just explain a little more about the way that the training for professionals works. So we have a 3-day training course for autism experienced professionals. At least two people from an area need to come and train because the program requires 2 trainers. And we license them, so that's the National Autistic Society licenses those individuals to deliver the program for 3 years. So it's a 3-year license, a bit like your Microsoft computer license. But we only train professionals who are experienced in working with autism, experienced with working with families, with young children. So if somebody wants to come on the training and all of their experience is working with adults, then we will not train them because this is a preschool program. Okay, so this is where we have licensed teams. We have over next slide. We have over 2,000 trainers, 314 teams. So a team can be 2 people, 6 people, 10 people. Our largest team in the UK would be a region that perhaps has 16 or 18 trainers who run the program with local families. As you can see, nearly all of our trainers are in the UK, but we have a few overseas teams. Our most recent conquest, Russia, Tanya and Slava, but also in New Zealand and Luxembourg, Japan, Greece, Ireland, Denmark and Brunei. So a range of exotic places. Between them, those 314 teams have run over 2,000 programs with over 12,000 families. Next slide. And only 482 families have started the program and not finished session 8. So our dropout rate is very low. And the reason we believe our dropout rate is very low is because parents refer themselves. Parents decide for themselves if they want to attend the program. So local professionals will tell them that it's available. Local professionals will encourage them to go to the information meeting and find out about the program. But parents need to decide for themselves whether this is right for them. And it's not right for everybody. 1 morning a week for 3 months, sitting with 5 other families, talking about autism, is not everybody's way of moving forwards. And that's fine. EarlyBird in the UK is part of a spectrum of provision that's available for families. Next slide. So, licensed trainers, people who have attended the course and run the program with local families. A speech and language therapist, having worked for 20 years as a speech and language therapist, EarlyBird is the most effective part of my job. An outreach teacher, the EarlyBird program is quite simply an example of good working practice. An educational psychologist, we found that the parents appreciated being able to talk in depth about the children and shared a great wealth of ideas, experiences, and ways of working. And that's a really important element of the program. Just whoop, whoop, whoop. And finally, this is one of my all-time favorite clips that I just have to show you. This is Lisa and her little girl Ella. This is 6 months after the beginning of the program. So the 3-month program and then the 6-month gap before follow-up. This little girl at pre-program was all over the house. If mum often was in the same room, she would scream. She was very tactile, defensive. She didn't want to be touched. She's still a pre-verbal little girl, but communicating very clearly with mum, and they're enjoying a lovely activity together. How well does that mum know that little girl? She knew when she knelt up and looked her in the eyes, she was finished. She'd had enough. Okay, so that's the EarlyBird program. Details on the board, details on this board as well. Do we stop for questions? Do we have tea? And then if anybody wants to come back for questions?
Что вы выберете? Чуть-чуть задержаться и задать вопросы или пойти попить чаю, потом вернуться с вопросами? Так, и как мы будем это регулировать? Голосовать будем? Итак, вопросы или чай? Кто за вопросы? Кто за чай? Вопросы. So the vote is for the questions.
Oh.
Первый вопрос.
I'm English. I would vote for the tea. Nothing is more important than afternoon tea. Okay.
Джон, простите, что не даем вам попить чаю, но очень много всего хотелось бы у вас спросить. Екатерина Бурлак, педагог, психолог, Москва. Скажите, пожалуйста, какие диагностические методики, может быть, вы используете, кроме видео, кроме обсуждения видео, для того, чтобы понять уровень понимания речи, да, степень развития речи у ребенка? Или вы применяете вот эти карточки, визуальное подкрепление, PECS, там, независимо от того, насколько ребенок понимает речь?
Thank you. We don't use anything. What we encourage our families to do is to be a detective and look at what's appropriate for their child. So it might be the spoken word, it might be a sign system, it might be pictures, it might be photographs, it might be symbols, it might be the written word, but more often than not, it's a combination of everything. But what we do is we lay out what is available and what is useful, and parents decide for themselves what's appropriate for them.
Спасибо.
You're welcome. No more questions.
Извините, я только сегодня пришла на конференцию, может быть, я что-то упустила важное. Для меня вот это все понятно. Для меня непонятно, вот применительно к нашей реальности только, то есть расскажите о том, как у вас происходит ранняя диагностика, благодаря которой проблема ставится именно в раннем возрасте. Потому что наша ситуация, что пока как бы проблема не становится глобальной, родители не начинают искать никакую помощь, потому что до 2 лет нет практически никаких услуг, нет знаний у врачей, не знаю, у специалистов, с которыми эти родители могут сталкиваться, которые могут вообще как-то навести их на мысль, что уже пора искать помощь.
Okay. You missed yesterday. Yeah, people are nodding. I think you need to go online and access the presentations that we had yesterday from Brian and Christy particularly, which looked at the early diagnosis, because I know things are very different here to the UK. Our programme is very much post-diagnosis, so we don't get involved pre-diagnosis, but all of the information that was shared yesterday about spreading the word and raising awareness is what happens in the UK. In the UK, every family, until their child is age 7, has a health visitor, and she's a professional who looks at child's development. So they don't visit every week, they visit at kind of regular milestones. So they would visit immediately the child is born, they then visit at around 9 months, and then again at around 18 months, and then again at 24 months and 36 months. So in the UK, the health visitor is often the first person who will flag up that she thinks that there is a concern with the child. Okay. Where's the microphone?
Надо передавать микрофон для вопросов, иначе она их не узнает.
100% детей смотрят, все 100% детей.
In theory, yes. Yeah. In practice, probably not 100%, but very nearly. It's part of state provision, National Health Service. Yeah. We complain about National Health Service, but in reality, it's very good.
Спасибо вам большое. Меня зовут Каролина Соловьет. Я хочу сказать вам большое спасибо за ваш поддерживающий доклад. И 2, может быть, связанных между собой вопросов. Правильно я поняла, что педиатры настолько хорошо информированы об аутизме, что именно они первыми поднимают красный флажок, потому что у нас аналогичный мониторинг проводят педиатры. И второй вопрос. Мне показалось, что эта программа была бы очень хороша для воспитателей и учителей, которые работают с детьми. По крайней мере, вот в России я бы видела это так. Что вы думаете по этому поводу? Или, возможно, у вас уже все это есть? Спасибо.
Two very good questions. The first question, yes, many of our pediatricians are very well versed in autism, but in order to get the family to visit the pediatrician, the health visitor or the family need to show a concern themselves. So sometimes there's a little delay with getting the family to the pediatrician because the health visitor may be on maternity leave and the mum is not concerned. So sometimes there is a delay, but certainly many of our pediatricians are very well versed in the things that we need to look for in very young children. And we have a number of pediatricians who are EarlyBird trainers who deliver the program as well as practitioners. Your second question, yes, I think it would be a great program for educators. There isn't really anything similar in the UK for educators. There are other training courses, but mostly they're a day or a few days. Politically, and that's a small p, my role in the National Autistic Society is parent support programs. So yes, I agree it would be great for educators, but unfortunately I'm not able to roll it out to educators. But maybe. Never say never.
Скажите, пожалуйста, вы сказали, что в ваши группы входят семьи, имеющие детей с разным уровнем нарушения аутистического спектра. Как, когда у вас проходит обсуждение результатов, как эти семьи, которые имеют менее успешные результаты, относятся к результатам более позитивным? Как вы вообще подбираете группы и что вы делаете?
Okay. Yep. We put them together, thank you, we put them together simply as they come through the door. So 6 families come through the door, they are the next group. So we don't have a pre-verbal group, a verbal group, we just have 6 families with children with an autism spectrum disorder in the group. We don't look in the program at progress in the child. This is a parent program. We're looking at progress in the parent, which often produces progress in the child over the 3 months, but not always. So we are very clear to step back from, oh, Billy can do this and Mary can only do this. We very much look at what the adults are doing, the strategies that the parents are implementing and how that will help their child. People often ask, it's a really good question because people often say, but what if you have 2 families, you know, a very verbal able child and a pre-verbal child with learning difficulties? Does this family not think, oh, you know, I wish my child could do that? It really doesn't happen. In Barnsley, we have run programs with almost 350 families, and not one time have we had a family say, you know, their child is better than mine, why is mine so bad? Because the commonality of having a child with these difficulties in social, making sense of the world, sensory, far outweighs the fact that children are at different levels. And I know it will be hard for you to understand because people in the UK find it hard to understand that you can bring 6 families together and they're not comparing their children. But they don't. They're comparing, if anything, themselves and who's learnt the most on the programme and who's doing the most, implementing the most strategies on the programme.
Здравствуйте, меня зовут Людмила, Ростов-на-Дону. Я хотела бы спросить, сколько стоит обучение профессионалов и как это происходит? Вы вызываете людей, обеспечиваете или не обеспечиваете жильем и так далее? Спасибо.
Okay, good question. No, we don't provide accommodation. No, you stay in a hotel. The training costs £1,000 for 3 days and a 3-year license. So. Oh, yes. And for that you get the training manual, which tells you what to do in each of the sessions. You get the book, you get the PowerPoints, you get the video clips that accompany the program. So you get all of the materials and the 3-day training and the license. But accommodation and travel is paid for by the local council again.
Это в Йоркшире или в Лондоне?
Yorkshire.
Спасибо.
Yorkshire. Manchester, EasyJet, 4 hours.
Меня зовут Анна, я психолог из Москвы. У меня немножечко такой вопрос. Там был слайд про обучение родителей эффективным инструментом, ну, как бы взаимодействия с ребенком. Там был Spell, Teach и PEX. Правильно я понимаю, что Teach — это программа Шофлера?
Yes.
Вы учите... Ну, у PEX есть очень четкий протокол, который соблюдается от и до, и вы учите общие идеи, что можно общаться при помощи карточек, можно общаться при помощи жестов, или конкретному использованию вот этого метода?
Okay. We don't teach PEX. We tell parents that it is a useful tool. We have a summary of the PEX approach in the book, which has been rubber stamped by Laurie Frost and Andy Bondi, but we signpost parents to a PEX trainer, which sometimes is also the EarlyBird trainer. But we don't train in the sessions, we just highlight the existence of good strategies. Yeah, thank you.
И еще вопрос. Насколько в Великобритании развито сопровождение EBA консультантов, ну, EBA-терапии, и есть ли у вас какие-то связи такие прямые в работе? Или это две отдельные вещи, и родители дальше потом сами разбираются?
With who? Sorry.
Вы рассказывали о таких основах, ну, можно сказать, ну, коррекции поведения, да, это в том числе к EBA-терапии. Вы как-то взаимодействуете, или это тоже общая идея, что может быть и так?
Yeah. Again, we provide the general idea, the general concept, and signpost. We do a lot of that back at the beginning, signposting to more specialist services. Our program is very general, and then if parents want to do PECs or want to investigate ABA, then we can point them in the right direction. So we have very good relationships with all of these other more specialist services.